Yeah, it says off air. Okay, we're live now. Okay, so let's begin. All
Okay,
right.
hi.
Hey, okay, so I guess this is our first live stream. This is just a practice run, I guess. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's like both of us are new to this, and we're just going to
yeah. To
talk.
say, yeah, if you guys like our live stream discussion, and hopefully you like it, and we will do more.
Yeah, yeah. I think, well, first of all, let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go first. I'm one, and I'm quite enthusiastic about talking stuff happens in life.
Okay, well, okay, that's good. And you're also from,
Well, I have a Chinese background.
yeah, yeah. See,
Yay.
no, yeah, no, that's what makes you, unique. I think, like better than
Yeah.
boring England, London. But
Boring Londoner,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I
So
do have a slightly different view of things, I guess that makes me a different cultural background.
no, no, it does actually. We'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
So I am Rain Hands, aka George, aka Robert. I know you're, I know you're like, what the hell am I talking about? Okay, you know me as, look, my name is Robert, so you can just call me Robert. I
I'll
don't know
call
why
you
my name is.
AKA.
Yeah, yeah, or AKA, yeah, yeah. That. I don't mind. I have a lot of pseudo names online. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna talk today about ethnostates. Now, I don't know if any of you guys know about that, but ethnostates are basically countries where there is an overwhelming majority of one, I think, one ethnicity. Is that correct? I didn't actually look
Yeah,
up def.
one ethnicity and also one kind of the same group of people who share the same religion and from a same ethnic background. So kind of like imagine, well, let's say the whole China is Han Chinese, or even more like I don't know if this was going to offend anyone, but imagine the whole UK is just Christians, white Christians.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. And okay, so that's what an ethnostate is. And the reason why we're discussing it is because, I feel like most of Europe and maybe a lot of the Western world is moving further towards the right, the far right of politics.
Yep.
And, there are different, you could be right or you could be very far right. But I think at the tipping edge is far right, where there, or extreme far right, however you want to call it, there are ideas of an ethno state. Now, of course, you've come over to, I don't want to say so much about your private life or whatever on here, but you're in the UK, so you sort of know, you see how we live over here. You see that there are many different colors and people from all sorts of backgrounds, and it is a multicultural nation, I
Yeah,
would say.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are some, of course, there are some places that are, 99% white in the
Hmm.
UK, but I think in general, for the big cities, London, Birmingham, Manchester, even smaller
Hmm.
cities like Leicester, they've got many different races living together.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what's funny though, because living in London makes me feel we are really living in a multicultural world. Well, I guess that's because it's London. Because I actually did a little bit research, and it shows, do you know how many the percentage of white people in the population is actually 87% in the UK,
Yeah,
and that's really large. And if you look at the ethnic minority groups where they live, they mainly just lives in the large cities. So I guess the idea that is really a multicultural country, instead of saying it's a multicultural country, I would prefer to say it's really like London, the big cities in the UK are really big multicultural cities.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I think that's the difference because if you look at, for example, these far right rallies, the DFLA, they're
Mhm.
these football hooligans or people who come to support Tommy Robinson.
Mhm.
A lot of these people don't actually come from London, which is quite
No,
surprising, you know?
yeah, exactly, yeah. And if you look at the vote for Brexit and the people who why they are so angry about immigrants, they're mostly from small places and quite and those places you often really linked to just the white people's groups.
Yeah, you know, and actually, well, actually, it's really funny because the area that I was living in, which I no longer live in when Brexit happened, when
Mm-hmm.
we made the general election, the vote,
Mm-hmm.
um, they actually voted a majority for Brexit to
Oh,
leave.
really?
Yeah, yeah, and I was actually quite surprised because I think the area is, mainly white people, but there are a lot of black people there as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just quite surprised actually. I don't know the general makeup. There were just a lot of there was a lot of mixed race and black people, but it was, I admit,
Mm,
overwhelmingly white. But you know,
right.
yeah, it
But
was.
because Robert is also you also have an ethnic minority background, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So
Yeah.
my background is I am of Caribbean descent, of Jamaican and Saint Lucian. So yeah, my experience of race and that sort of thing. I don't know if I would say that it's typical of the black person living in the UK because we all have different experiences. But I would say that not it's probably not the typical experience because I grew up in a place where it was there were more white people basically, you know.
Mm,
Like for example, when I grew up, when I
mm,
was like when I was like 16, 17, that sort of stuff, I
mm.
met a lot more black people because I started to go to different colleges and stuff and I started to meet more black people. And I was surprised, like some of them, they would say to me, oh, I went to a school where there were only black people. I was like, what? In London, in UK, you went to a
Yeah.
school where there was only black people. Like, I was like, what? I literally did not know those schools existed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
me, you know, like America, in America,
Mm-hmm.
there's like black cities, you know, like
Yeah.
Atlanta and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
you could just, you could have a fully rich black culture. Whereas
Yeah.
in the UK, it's not really like that. I don't want to go too deep into that topic today because want to
Yeah,
focus on
definitely.
something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting for me.
But that kind of give you an idea about why and why and how what the reasons we are talking about is because we find it's really fascinating how some people come up with the idea about ethnostates and actually I actually watched this video on Twitter, a girl saying that the US should be ethnostates and what about those immigrants and the people and she literally said just kill them. And this is
Oh my god,
really
yeah.
yeah, it's really crazy for a lot of us. And ideally, I don't think ethno states exist in the 21st century.
Well, it's funny that you say that because whenever these far right people, and you know, I just want to say like, I don't really subscribe to any one political belief. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for some things I'm to the right. For some things, I'm to the left. But you know, I just believe in being a good human. I don't really divide everything to left and right like that. I think that's very much an American thing, which has crept over into Europe gradually over the years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, like for example, in when you go to America, the first thing they'll ask you is, you know, are you right? Are you right or are you left? You know, that's one of the things
Yeah.
they say, which I find weird. But anyway, they the far right people often use an example of Japan. They'll
Mm-hmm.
always say, "Oh, look at Japan. Look how progressive their society is. Look how harmonious it is." And
Mm.
there, I don't know. I don't know their immigration rate, but I believe it's quite low.
It's
So
very low. Yeah.
yeah, so they generally like uphold it and say, yeah, like, yes, this is what we need. We need this over here in Europe or whatever country they're from, the
Well,
US.
yeah, but in a way, I think the reason they say it is because by judging the appearance, you can't really tell the different ethnicities in Japan. But in fact, Japanese society is not ethno state. Japan is not an ethno state as well. Because in Japan, the majority is uh well oh, don't know I forgot the name, but they also have Chinese people living there and the people from from the South Japan, and it's a different ethnic group as well. So it's not the pure one group living in Japan.
Yeah, see,
Actually, I'm just going to Google the name while you continue.
yeah, yeah. See, actually, that's really funny because I think it, there's a lot of ignorance over here in the West, and even I will admit I didn't realize that there were different ethnicities over in Japan. Because
Mm,
I think without without being too racist, but I think a lot of a lot of people who aren't East Asian, they
mm-hmm.
struggle to find difference between,
Yeah.
different Asians. It's like black people, for example. A lot of white people just think, oh, you're just from the same place. Like they don't understand. There are different
Yeah.
ethnicities in
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in
right.
Africa, in the Caribbean. Like we're not all the same, and
Yeah.
that's probably the same. Well, yeah, that is the same way in Japan
Yeah.
and China. But
They
yeah,
they
so
have, yeah, so the ethnic Japanese make up about 98.5% of the total population. So it's really high, and that and from that fact I understand why people think Japan is an ethno state. But actually they have also quite a lot of Korean, Chinese and other people living in Japan, and they have some tributes which is a different ethnic background with Japanese. But a lot of history going on in Asia countries, so as in Europe. I think that's why when you look at people just judging by colors of their skin, it's easier to say, "Oh, we're not." We don't want to welcome you into our homeland. But my question always has been, so who owns the homeland? You know what I mean? So
mm,
so let's say there are a lot of British people claiming that they're British. But my
yeah,
question has always been, are you really British? Like how can you define what is British or English? Because if you just look at the history of the UK and even the royal family, they are not English, they are German,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So it's for that fact, I just really don't understand sometimes why people claim, oh, we're English. And I often wondered, are you really English? Is it your family was born and living in this island for, I don't know, God knows how long, prehistory? Or, like, it must be some traveling in the human history.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And lands they get invaded, they get taken
Mm,
over, and the same people living here today, even if
yeah.
they class themselves as white, they
Mm,
were probably not the same people living here 1,000 years ago.
yeah, yeah,
Like
that's,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing because I don't know if you. Well, first of all, before I just go down that road, can you tell us about because you're Chinese, can you tell us about the makeup of China, the ethnic makeup?
Yeah, of course. So the ethnic in China is about 92% Han Chinese, and the rest will be a combination of the so claimed 56 ethnic minority groups. And the quite big ones are like Mongolians, and Muslims. So those are also quite large groups. So
Right.
yeah, so by the fact that it's combined is up to 98% of Han Chinese, is really a Han dominated country.
Okay. And can you tell us how are people who aren't Han Chinese, how are they perceived and how are they treated?
So, well, because Han Chinese is the, without question, the dominant ethnic group in China. They live in, you know, the Great Wall, right?
Yeah.
So they live in the south of the Great Wall geographically, most likely. I'm not saying there are not people from different background not living here. It's not absolute, but most of them live in the south of the China Wall, the Great Wall. Sorry, the Great Wall, and in the east of Tibet, also south of the Mongolian, Inner Mongolia, and of course Xinjiang, which is where the Muslims mostly live.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really a large land, and geographically, that's also where Han Chinese have lived in centuries of in centuries.
But is there a mixing of people in the same way where Han Chinese live closely or amongst the other ethnicities? Is that sort of a thing?
Well, you know what's really funny though is I question whether I'm actually Han Chinese,
Right.
even though it's stated on my ID card and all the other government official registrations. It says I'm Han Chinese, but I highly doubt is whether I'm actually Han Chinese because with especially a country like China has a long history of war and people just traveling, migrant to different places. It's so there are a lot of mixed marriages and like let's say from where I'm from, we have some Hui people which are close to Muslims but not the same. They don't believe in completely exactly the same thing. But so the place I'm from, we have at least these two ethnic groups. Now, a lot of people, even though they have they are from a different ethnic group, they still register themselves as a Han Chinese because it's just easier for them to live.
Right. Okay. And so you say that it's easier for them to live.
Yeah,
In what way then? You're
yeah. Well,
implying that it's more
yeah.
difficult?
Because apart from, I guess it's always easier if you live in a place that you join the majority group because people like people who they are like. Um, but in terms of it's an ethnic minority in China. Apart from you have a lower requirement for going to a university. So when it comes to the university entrance examination, if you are an ethnic minority, from the ethnic minority group, the examiners, not examiners, I mean the people from the committee, they will give you extra points to make it easier for you to go to a university, which in a same way you can understand it as a compensation or discrimination even because their mindset is people from ethnic minority background, they are less well educated, and they are tracing back to 100 200 years ago. They even listed it when they established the modern China as the country. They even said Han Chinese are more civilized
Oh,
than
wow.
other people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's kind of is a discrimination, but it also means that as a apart from going to university, you have the bonus. Other ethnic minority people sometimes doubt your ability because they would assume you are from a rural area where you have less transport to support you to go to the big cities. Your education system, no system, your education facilities and the teaching resources and everything is worse than Han Chinese because Han Chinese are mostly living in cities and
yeah.
big cities and in the east where the economy is also even better. So um, I'm not saying that they are represented in some occasions, such as the National Day. They are allowed to dress their own costumes, their own for and we were educated, and it's also listed in Chinese law that all the beliefs and all the culture should be respected. But in reality, is Han Chinese dominating the country, and they have the power. They sometimes they just ignored what the other people, the different people from different cultural backgrounds, their need. It's
Yeah.
not, it may not be on purpose they ignored it, but because if you face a country with more than 90% of people like your same culture, it's easy, it's very easy that you kind of more or less ignored the other different needs.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to make a comment that sometimes, because you know that you said that you suspect she might be mixed slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like sometimes in the back of my mind, I think, oh, is there Chinese in me? Because
Yeah.
like it's funny because sometimes people say, oh, you have Chinese eyes, and
Yeah.
I don't, well, you shave my eyes, but
Yeah.
sometime during the Atlantic slave trade,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese laborers actually came over to the Caribbean.
Yeah,
So there
right,
was,
yeah.
yes, there was also some mixing there and stuff,
So
and
do you think you have some Chinese genes?
I don't know. Like, if see me in a fight, and if I act like Jet Li or something, then
Yeah.
maybe I've got something in there.
Well,
But
you know what? I think we're much more like ethnically closer because I just read a funny thing. So a Chinese boy said, asked his dad, and dad, I learned the U.S. history, and then dad said, oh, that's great. What did you learn? And he said I learned the history about slavery, and I feel so great, and I feel so sorry for them, but I also feel so lucky that I'm white. And the dad said, no, you are not white. You're yellow. And then the boy said, oh, but this color doesn't look like yellow for me. And then the father said, yeah, we're a tiny bit brown. And the black people are not black. They're a tiny bit brown as well.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. Because everyone's like, yeah, we're not fully black
Yeah.
and stuff. No, no, no. Yeah, no. That actually makes sense. And in terms, even of our experiences, because during I
Yeah.
think was it the Second World War where the Japanese came over and
Yeah, Second
yeah,
World War. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like you guys have your own terrible experiences with oppressors and that sort of thing. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
we won't go too much
Yeah,
into
we
all of
will.
that right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of first of all, I just want to tackle the issue of racism because well, in it's my perception, I do not know, but from what I've heard,
Mm.
racism isn't really a thing in China. It's like you could just say what you want. Like, oh, for example, there are some sad stories,
Mm.
where Chinese people they come over to, I don't know, an African country, let's say Ghana, for
Mm.
example, because you know that many
Mm.
many Chinese people are coming over to Africa these days and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
they're building their own communities, and sometimes they after 5 p.m. they might just say, "Oh, no black people allowed in a restaurant," you know, and that's just it's just how it goes. And I've heard not
Yeah.
just Africa, like there's other places which they've done it around the world, but I'm just using
Yeah.
that as a recent example because that's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that I've
yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like there doesn't seem to be a thing of racism. It's just you oh go you're not the same color as us, just go away. It's just sort of like that, but that's
Yeah.
but of course I'm not Chinese, so I want to know what is your perception of racism over
Well,
there.
I think the problem really for them is they didn't realize it's inappropriate to say it. I think it's really an ignorance because so even though I told you there are so claimed 56 ethnic groups in China,
Yeah,
but we all look quite similar. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So it's
yeah, yeah.
like East Asian people look quite similar in general eyes, but especially for like let's say one of the very large ethnic minority groups in China is Mongolians, and I don't personally really tell the difference between us and the Mongolians.
I
Um,
see a bit of difference, but
yeah,
anyway, that's
tiny
my
bit,
opinion. Forget about
yeah,
what
but Yeah, um, yeah, it's a bit different because when it comes to the growing up environment in Mongolia and in China is quite different. So you can tell the difference by just the Mongolians living in Beijing and with Han Chinese. Honestly, to God, there is no difference. We have a lot of celebrities and a lot of Mongolians change their identity and change their surname to Han, and I have people grow up with, they actually have a Mongolian background, but they adopted Han surnames, and they use the Han names for their whole life. But they just know by their heart they are Mongolians, and I couldn't possibly tell any difference. So because
Right.
people growing up in the same environment, speaking same language, dressing the same way, educated in the same system, you don't really, that's what I'm saying in the beginning, the ignorance, and less respectful. It's just they didn't really know they need to respect the difference. It's there by law, it's there on the textbook, but because in reality, in real life, you didn't deal with people have a different cultural background. Even people have a cultural background, they adopted your lifestyle for hundreds of years now. So you kind of feel, oh, we are the same. And when it comes to Black people, which is by sight, you can tell we are different.
Yeah.
They, a lot of times, I don't think they know how to cope with it. So honestly, so like when my auntie came to the UK and visit me,
Yeah.
and we went to eat kebab, and usually people who make kebab are not white,
Yeah.
not Asian, right? So, and my auntie said, I don't want to eat it. I said, why? And she said, his hand is dirty. And
Oh
I
my
said, no, his
God.
hand is dirty. It's just the black skin. It's the color. It's how he looks like.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
my auntie is a really lovely woman, and she didn't know by saying that she's offending people, because in her whole life, in the past 60 years, she has never met any black person in her life, so she doesn't know how to say it, how to deal with it. Luckily, that
Yeah.
guy doesn't understand Chinese. Otherwise, I don't know. We probably will be
Yeah.
kicked out of the restaurant.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I think there's also a thing, there's a perception that Chinese people are more maybe timid or something. And,
Mm,
like, how, well, I don't want to stereotype my own people, but you know how a lot of black people are. They're just loud and brash, and
yeah,
that's just how they are. Like, I don't know.
yeah.
Like, I think maybe I slipped out of that gene pool or whatever, but I'm an anomaly though. But most black people are just like that. And I think for me, I don't mind because that's just what I grew up with. But for other people, maybe Chinese people, it
Mm,
might at first, I think they might feel uncomfortable, but then
mm.
when they realize that, okay, these are nice people, then they kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, so how do you feel when it comes to, some, um, let's say Chinese people, they do quite racist things to black people. What do you feel?
Um, well, I mean, look, in my personal experience, I knew what's that country that's like close to China? I think it might be Tibet. What is
Nepal?
Nepal? Sorry, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've actually worked with a lot of Nepalese people in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
they look quite, a lot of them look quite close to Chinese people actually.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very, very lovely people. I remember when I was working in one place, and like the manager was Nepalese, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so, and a lot of the people working there, and great people, they treat you like a brother or something. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because there was another Jamaican guy there, and
Mm-hmm.
but he actually grew up in Jamaica because I grew up in the UK, of course. But anyway, he had a different, he was, I don't know, maybe a typical Jamaican guy, just loud singing and everything. And that
Mm-hmm.
was just how he was. And
Yeah.
because I'm not like that, it's funny. One of the Nepalese guys, he
Mm-hmm.
said to me, "Oh, Robert, you, Jordan, I think, what was his name? Maybe it was Jordan or something." He said, "Jordan's Jamaican and you're Jamaican, but you don't seem like you're Jamaican. And I almost felt offended. Like, what do you mean? I don't seem like I'm Jamaican. Like, oh, he acts Jamaican. You don't act Jamaican. And I was just like, what is this guy talking about? Like, how
What
can you
is
say?
Jamaican?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. That rubbed me. Or I knew what he meant, but it rubs me the wrong way a lot. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
in general, I like because there aren't so many Chinese people over here. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
had too much experience, and I know the thing is with Chinese people, sometimes I do feel that they're a bit brash in the way that they
Mm.
come across. It's like, even for example, if you deal with someone in a Chinese shop, for example, like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they might not be so polite, or they just grab the
Mm.
money or something, but
Yeah.
or there's this thing of they want you to pay before you do anything. You pay the money
Yeah.
for you, and in the UK, you don't really do that. You get your
Mm.
service, then you pay afterwards. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what I've seen in the media, from like
Mm-hmm.
giving you that example of the Chinese people coming over to Africa, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's like they don't even respect the people sometimes. I'm not going to paint them
Mm.
all with one
Yeah.
brush. I'm not over there. I can't see stuff. And of course, they're only going to put in the media what's
Mm-hmm.
negative and what's going to rile people up. I'm sure it's not all the people there. I've heard that there are
Mm-hmm.
Chinese people getting in relationships with African women, and it seems nice. But some of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff where it seems like they don't respect the people, they treat them like dirt, like lower class people.
Yeah.
It does hurt my heart a bit. It's like we're
Yeah,
all
definitely. Yeah.
human at the end of the day, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there is a part of us which is forgetting the past. Just like it
Yeah.
was it's not even been 100 years since the Japanese came over
Mm-hmm.
and they did all of that cruel stuff that they did. And
Mm-hmm.
when we think of we remember the Holocaust, where
Mm-hmm.
it's disputed how many people died, but a lot of people died
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
And then you have slavery, which a lot of people, if you're not black, a lot of people, it seems like these days they don't even
Mm.
want you to mention it. It's like, oh, you're a crybaby. Why are you talking about slavery? You wasn't a slave. You wasn't born a slave. Listen, guys, we need to remember the past. Otherwise, we're
Yeah.
gonna go back, because it
Mm.
seems like I don't know. Europe is reverting back into those ways where they just want to separate again. And
Mm.
you know what? Like, I could
Mm.
talk about a lot of things, but I don't think we should delve too deeply into those topics today. We could break it down and go step by step.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one last thing that I do want to discuss, and that is culture.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that by having different cultures meshed into one country, will it dilute the overall structure of a country? Okay, first of all, can you give me your opinion on the
Yeah.
UK culture?
I think it's pretty cool culture, to be honest. I think that's I can't really say the whole UK culture, like I said. Just to say London, I think it's really cool, and I think it's really good. Is by breathing the air in London every day, it taught you,
Yeah,
it teaches you that you need to respect people, that come from different background, and you kind of everyone can find a home here because it's quite inclusive, and it doesn't exclusive anyone, and you can't possibly really feel being singled out because you can always find people who you are like in London. So I think it's really nice. It also opens its arms to the world and welcomes people despite of the immigration policies, but it definitely welcomes people to come to travel and give you a very welcoming environment.
but do you think that there are some parts where the UK just accepts anything, and it might not be preferential? For example, you could just be a transvestite or something, and there are a lot of people who are upset at this type of thing because they're like, this is the reason why we're not making so many kids, and the family structure is being destabilized because the woman just goes out and she has her career and does what she wants, and a lot of men are just turning gay, or they don't know how to talk to women and this and that, and it seems like there's no structural balance. And then, sometimes people complain that foreigners come over, and I'm just giving you an extreme example, and maybe they have grooming gangs where they groom young children, and this type of thinking isn't in European culture, which isn't exactly true, but that's what a lot of people think,
Yeah, I mean, like there's the everything has byproducts, and you can't possibly, because of the byproduct is bad, and you can't, because of byproducts bad, you can't claim the whole production is bad. That's what I'm thinking about. And as you said, it definitely is changing the world, but every time in history it does the same. It's just because of in the 21st century where the internet and everything develops so advanced. That's why we see, and we can, not only we can, in the past people can only feel it in the state in what happens in their villages, and they can't feel the speed of change. But now, because of the internet and the mass media, so you can actually see more than just happens around you, and you feel the change is way too fast for you to handle. And I think that happens to a lot of people who was born here in the and family lived here for a long time. It's the change becomes too fast, is kind of out of control and out of the track from what they can see. That's why they were worried about immigrants. But if you actually think in the human history, in the long history, we accept these changes of time by time over time. So if you think immigrants were or people travel here bad, think about the history. In the ancient histories, let's say tea. Tea is from the people love tea in the
Yeah,
UK, and that's from India.
right. Yeah.
Without all the travelings, without all the immigrants, without all people living in different places, a lot of culture wouldn't be formed. And can you say now Britain can be separate from tea? No, you can't, because it's become a part of culture of the white British people's culture. And this wouldn't happen if there is no movement in human history.
Well, yeah, that's true, but a lot of no, some of the movement has been through wars or just colonialism. I can't say that word. Yeah,
Colonialism. Yeah.
there we go. See, Chinese teach me English. There we go. Yeah, and it's not always the most positive way. But I do agree. You're right. You're right. We take our culture from many different parts of the world. But I think what's different about today's society is it's just so drastic. You've just got so many people coming in from this place and that place, this place and that place, all at once, and they're sort of living their own life. Because actually, it's funny. I can't remember. I read this article a while ago, which was talking about the history of Black people in the UK. And I wish I had stats. I wish I had the data in front of me. But anyway, I can't remember. It may have been during the 16th century. There were actually Black people during that time period. A lot of them came over through slave boats, and then somehow they managed to get free and things like that. But then they just came to the UK and they just lived a regular life. And I think in the end, the Queen at the time, just after a while, there was only maybe 2,000 Black people in the whole of London, but she just said, "Oh, you know what? We've got too many Black people. We've got to send them out," and then they just got rid of us all. So you could, and it's funny because I was just thinking, wow, it's gonna if this far right thing pushes through, it's going to be the second time that they kick us out of the UK.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
going to be
but
hilarious.
like the idea of being too many. Do you know? I just read the survey saying that the whole population of human on Earth, people who actually immigrated, only 3%.
Right.
So we feel a lot. That's what I mean by internet and all the medias. We feel a lot, and also because we live in London, so we feel, oh, there are so many ethnicities. And also look at TV. You have people, presenters from all over the world, have different ethnic minorities, also works in the BBC, and you feel, oh, it's such a mixed culture. But in reality, it's not big. It's only 3% of the whole population on Earth moved to different places.
Yeah, and what's funny is that living in London, London is a bubble, and people who
Yeah.
don't travel much, they don't realize this. For example, like in London, there are a lot of black people who live here. They think that there are lots of black people in the UK. Black
Yeah.
people is only 3% of the UK. You know that.
Yeah.
We're literally tiny, tiny, tiny. If you live in London, it's like we're everywhere. It's like we're there, and it seems like we're all
Yeah.
over the place. And then you get these far right people. Like, oh, the blacks are taking. There's 3% of us. We're not
They
taking over
conquered
anywhere,
our
man.
land.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, we're conquered. We're having babies. We're doing this. Like, I'm like, dude, that is not happening. That's just
No.
scaremonger tactics from
Yeah,
reading the
exactly.
Daily Mail and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you feel like in China, do you feel like the culture is I don't know, is the correct word homogenous? Where there's just one straight culture and everybody just has there is the way of doing things. There's not a way of doing things. You could go, for example, in the UK, you could take this path, you could take that path, whereas in China, there's a set path to take. You know what you have to do if you want to get to your goal, and there's a certain way to behave and everything. Do you feel it's that way?
I do feel so. I do feel there are less options for you to choose if you choose to build your life in China. Well, like
But
you said, like what you said is, it's quite sad in a way. That's why I said it's probably much more easier, if you are non-Han Chinese, but and if you become Han Chinese, if you take the identity, it probably will be easier for you. And it also makes sense why a lot of people, especially Mongolians, um they change their surname, they change their claim. They say they are Han Chinese because it's just easier. And it's also about history. So when it comes to the Cultural Revolution,
yeah,
back in the 60s, I think, which I can't swear I know exactly the fact, but back then, and also back in when China was just established, a lot of people changed claim they are Han Chinese and registered as Han Chinese, because
right.
that's just way easier. It's way easier to find a job, to even, in China, because it's sadly that it's just one party ruled, not officially claimed as one party ruled, but in reality it's one party seizing all the power. So if you want to have power, if you want to have a better life, you have to join the party. And although they have what's that called, active affirmation, is that affirmative action, although they have the affirmative action allows certain percentage of people to be female, to be non-Han Chinese, but majority opportunities is still left for Han Chinese. And also, if you are a ethnic minority, it's really hard for you to take the position. You have to be deputies. So I wish this can be changed soon in the future, but currently that's just the fact.
Okay, all right. Well, I think as this is our first video, I feel like we should leave it there. I think this has been
Yeah,
a good and
definitely.
Yeah, I think this has been an interesting discussion. Actually, like I've enjoyed it. How do you
Yeah,
feel?
I enjoyed it very much. Yeah,
Okay,
I hope people, whoever is listening to us, if you are, and then you enjoy that as well. Enjoy as
and
much as we do.
yeah, yeah, and if you like it, just leave a like, leave a comment, and hopefully we do other topics and we get into the swing of this. So yeah, I'll close it out. Thank you very much for listening.